Not sure where the faustiest, which of them all is, but there we go. Oh, wait a minute. I think he's there. Let's click the magic button and he might appear. Oh no. It's just his avatar. The Wheel of Doom. There he is. I thought we were just going to get the Wheel of Despair, but apparently not. We've graced with his holiest.
His
The
faustiness.
faustiest witch. Faustus Black. Because you dressed in black by the looks of it.
So, I did just suddenly think that. I was like, oh. Okay, it's fine. You're in grey. That's not much better.
Grey's better. I am grey. My ethics and morality is grey.
Okay. You're going for metaphor.
You're just pure nasty evil.
I is black to the core. That's how I like it, baby.
Hello, Alison Dark, who says hello. So today, what are we talking about, Chris? Because it's called Bottle of Piss, and that kind of implies witch bottles, for those that don't know.
I'm assuming that's what you were going for.
Yeah, but I don't think I want to drag a whole episode out just about pissing in a jar.
But I'm sure we can talk about different kinds of protective magic. We can probably throw a bit of shade on these protective grid bollocks while we're at it, like we did in the podcast the other week. So yes, I'm sure we can kind of deal. So I don't think we've dealt with protection magic really with the Fausties yet.
That's because the best defense is a great offense. You've got it's like Bruce Lee, a 1-inch punch. You just punch him first to make sure you do a good enough job, and then you've got no need for a backup plan. Do you know? So let's talk first about folk magic then.
Yeah, because I think with Cunning Man stuff.
There's folk magic, from my perspective of folk magic, is that when you've got a spell or some piece of magic that you copy, not really understanding how it works, and just say, it's got to work because it's magic. For me, the idea of folk magic is not about, well, the folk aren't particularly intelligent. What it seems to be more is that I've been given this, or I'm doing this because it's something that gets done. It's a kind of magical approach that's not really given through an initiatory tradition. It seems to be something that gets picked up and kept throughout culture. So the idea of the witch bottle, if you ask a lot of people that used to make witch balls how they work, would they actually be able to tell you? Like the old horseshoe above the door, if you said, why is that up there? Would they say, oh, we put that up there for protection? And when you say, how does that work? Would they be able to give you an answer? Most of the time I find not. Most of the time I find it's more like superstitions of protection or superstition. It's kind of like, well, you always do that.
Protection or something to do with luck.
How does it work? Well, it's magic, innit? It's magic, innit? That's how it works. Yeah. So folk magic, what I'd like to do today is maybe to discuss some folk magic and talk about protection magic, but then break it down, kind of the reverse engineer it. How does that actually work? Because I think that's what a lot of people miss. They don't see a lot of is people breaking down these things, because they'll get things like, oh, the old horseshoe, the devil, and all of that. Yeah, can't cross. The devil can't cross. The evil can't cross because of some old story. But then you say, well, why? How does that magical contract work exactly? All that sort of crap. So the first thing we should probably tackle is the old witch bowl. So for those that don't know, a witch bowl is really anti-witchcraft, I suppose. Because if you're talking about back in the day when all witchcraft meant was maleficent, bad magic, not this white magic, grey magic, good witches, bad witches. There was no such thing as them when we go and back.
There was just
so
us.
It was just us. Yeah, when we go really back. So yeah, so we're talking really, okay, witch bottle. I'm a common person. I live in a house or on a farm, and I need to protect against these would-be witches out there. I don't know much about them. I don't know much about a witchcraft. I just know that it's going to spoil the crops if I don't do something about it. So how can I protect against it? Well, I'm going to protect against it by doing this here witch bowl thing and burying it or putting it up the chimney or hiding it somewhere, because that's what old John down the road told me to do, and that's what old Granny did, and that's what Grandad did. You know, everyone knows that protects against witchcraft.
Please say you've got a bottle of piss. I'm not going to lie. I'll be disappointed if you don't have a witch bottle there.
I do have a witch bottle. Yes, it is filled with genuine urine. No, I don't have it here right now. It is actually buried. However, I will post the link to where you can look at said bottle.
Then you can look at said bottle of piss. Okay, that's good.
Where you can look at said bottle of piss, because it is on the Thoth Witchcraft website. Of course it is. No, not to sell. It's actually one of really old blogs. The spelt.
Yeah, it's one of the first blogs you ever did.
Because my spelling is obviously renowned.
Yeah, shockingly.
So I'll find that a sec and then I'll post it. Oh, it's from the 6th of November 2019. This is how old it is. Right, I'll post it in the chat. There we go. If you want to look at my witch bowl, it's the one with the candle in the top of that. So, witch bottles. Concept. You take a bottle and you piss in it, and then you kind of bury it. Now, it varies quite a lot, because obviously some people put a bit of rosemary in it, some people put nails in it, some people put all sorts of things in it. But the concept is essentially a glass vessel that you urinate in, put some bodily fluids in, and something nasty generally, or cleansing. So nails obviously quite nasty. You don't want to get stuck with a nail. And then you go and bury it in your garden, or you go and put it somewhere kind of integral to the house. So if you're burying it in the garden, it's on your land. It's the foundation of your property, is the underneath the ground, yes? Or if you put it in the chimney, up the chimney, you're putting it in the family room,
in the hearth,
around the hearth. Yeah.
The centre of your home.
It goes up the chimney. A little ledge we used to have, you'd flip the lid to stop the draft from coming down. You could put your hand over the top and there was a little ledge inside. So I used to put stuff in there. My sister used to put her weed up there. I used to put my magic books up there. Mummy and Daddy never found out about that. I hope they're not watching now. In fact, I don't think I even took that. Oh, never mind. Ignore that. Okay. Let's go back to talk about witches' bottles. So
yeah. So I think
you were to make a witch's bottle, Chris, the concept with a client, would you be one of those people that we see a lot on the internet and say, well, it's not a witch's bottle unless you piss in it and put this in it and that in it, because that's how it's always been done? Are you the traditional type that says, well, in order to call it a witch bottle, it must conform to this? Are you more of a kind of general concept kind of a guy? Or, how does that work for you?
Me, I don't mind either. Like, there are some people that will say it needs to be urine. The main reason for that is you would normally collect the urine from the family. So you take it from the latrine or the outhouse that you had, and therefore had everybody in it. I think is the main reason that we use urine traditionally. But actually, these days, it really depends on what you consider that link to be familiarly. If it's a family bond, then obviously anything that's got your DNA has got anybody else in the house. The question is, do you have a funny uncle that you want to keep out? In which case, you probably don't want to use DNA. You probably want to be a bit more specific about what they are. And and focus on the actual specifics of the people that currently live in your house. So it really does depend on, you know, how particular you want to be. So traditionally it would have been urine because it was easy access. It was something, you know, you could pass around, and even Granny could get urine in the jar.
What, you know, one of the family piss parties?
You know, so there's a way that there's a reason that has been urine. It's easy to get hold of. It's easy to get hold of from everybody because we all do it. So it's one of those things that kind of, you know, made sense. You've got to, when you look at these kind of traditional methods, you've got to look at the reason why those things were chosen. You know, they didn't want to cost, they can't cost anything because they don't have enough money. You know, it's not going to be made of something precious. It's going to be an old jar that's something that was used before. It probably had pickled eggs or something like that in it beforehand, that wasn't really suitable for holding anything else. You know, even in giving up a vessel for it, it's going to be a throwaway bottle of some description, because it's not going to be something, it's not going to be best china or you know, really expensive, you know, hand blown something. It's going to be something cheap, utilitarian, that is not going to be missed. You know, this isn't the kind of devotee magic where you're getting your best stuff out. This is a throwaway charm based magic of things that you know, have around, and then you might, you know, you'd pick things that were representative of that garden. So obviously nowadays people use things like rosemary, they use protective herbs. What you would have probably used traditionally would have been plants that live on your pit of land. So they would be things that naturally grow there, that represent your boundaries. They're not going to necessarily be something like rosemary, unless you're in the part of the world where rosemary grows, and you happen to have some of that growing in your garden. What they're likely to be is herbs that make up their boundaries. If they, you know, got a laurel hedge or something like that, it would probably be something like that that represents of the space. But again, you're talking old school sympathetic magic that's made from bits and pieces. Then the obvious other thing that's always in them is either broken glass or sharp stones or you know, needles and nails.
Now the stones, do you have to make them yourself in the kidneys, or can just gravel do out of the parking at the front?
At the end of the day, it's about the sharpness. Again, it's sympathetic magic. It's that defensive part of what would hurt somebody. So yeah, stepping on nails dipped in urine would definitely cause sepsis.
Needle in the eye.
Or needle in the eye, definitely. So yeah. You know, anything that is defensive, that's the defensive part of it. Obviously, other charms and the connection with iron we can move on to later. I don't believe has anything to do with Satan, but probably has a lot to do with Fae. But we can get to that in a bit.
Okay, so you've got your witch bowl. It's filled with the urine, and it's filled with the rosemary and with the nails. So let's think about a concept that we could use it for in the modern age, that we might want to do that and break down the component parts to inspire you, because you don't have to copy stuff from backwards in time, even really old stuff that's thousands of years old, thinking that it's somehow more potent. You don't need to do that. You can be innovative and you can change things around, providing you know how it's supposed to work. So what we'll do is we'll share a simple formula for you to create a witch bowl that we'd call a witch bowl that is based on older witch bottles. So we have the concept that some people that are doing the witch wars for Thoth Witchcraft Shop and the Witchcraft Live Facebook group, the competition where we got someone to spy on someone, yeah? Stick a needle in your eye. Now, we're not talking about physical sight, we're talking about astral sight and psychic sight. Now, if we had a psychic or a witch wanting to spy on someone, how might that psychic witch be defended against to stop the witch from doing the spying? Well, you could create a witch bottle to do that. So what does the psychic witch need? Well, she might be asking the spirits to spy on her, but if she's doing it herself and honing in, she's going to be honing in on a signature. That signature, of course, is going to be you. So what we need is we need a trap and we need a decoy. Now, obviously, taking something of you like your DNA, urine maybe, would potentially act as a decoy. So if you were to fill your bottle with urine, then potentially that witch on the boundary, so the outside, the boundary of your abode and your garden, your house, wherever you live, that witch would then interact with that potentially, or spirit would interact with that and think, okay, I've locked on now, I've locked onto this, I can feel the energetic signature of this person. Ow! And they've been pushed back because of the needles and the pins and the spikes in the eye. So you've got the concept of creating a trap. You need something to lock onto, so something for the witch or spirit to lock onto that thinks it's you, only to be given a surprise. So obviously the symbology there is the urine is symbolic of you and your signature. It does contain DNA as well. Is also the pins is the defense mechanism or offense mechanism, technically. It's the attack to push back. And then rosemary could be cleansing in energy, generically energy, because it's going to require a certain amount of energy for this. Now, I'm not going to say that witch bottles are particularly effective, if I'm honest. And I don't find witch bottles to be particularly effective, if I'm honest. But then I don't find much of folk magic to be particularly effective unless you've got a proper witch working it, i.e. someone that knows why they're putting those things together and are able to empower and draw the energy from those things. Just because you get a bottle and piss in it with the intention of it protecting you doesn't mean it will. There's a big problem there, I think, Chris, isn't it? Because a lot of people just do these copy and paste out of the books. They just follow a cookery recipe and then they think, well, it didn't turn out like that lasagna I made when I followed the chef recipe, and I thought it was the same. Just follow along. Red candle, red ribbon, still no lover. So where are we going next? That's which bottle's done.
You can't. There is no kind of catch-all, which I think is what we have to go through with almost every mentee we've ever had, which is going, there is no magic formula for how something works. There is no recipe. What works for one witch might not work for another. It is down to you having an understanding of how that formula operates. So, if you have no understanding of how that works, how are you expecting it to work? Because these things aren't innately powerful. At the end of the day, it is a bottle of piss. What you are adding is a lot more than just that, just that set of ingredients that make the thing happen. There is a chemistry, there is an energy needed, there is a nuclear fusion required in order for you to make that happen. You don't just by getting this ingredient and that ingredient, throwing it in the dish and hoping it happens. You need to actually engaged in the process to make these things happen. So, yes, there is a certain charm to these kind of cunning man, cunning woman kind of folk magic. But at the end of the day, there can be something far more interesting if you're managed to use folk magic as a decoy in a big way. Making something that looks innocuous, is something quite dangerous. Is, think of the Nazis and making bombs look like bangers and mash. Like, that's the sort of concept we're going with here, is making something look really safe that could be holding quite a punch. But that requires energy, that requires tenacity, and that requires your imagination to think, how do these things work, and how can I make the best way of making this really effective? It isn't as simple as urine, nails, rosemary, bottle, ground. Like, it isn't that simple, but it is all at the same time. You need to know what these ingredients do, how they interact with each other, and how they make that happen. The one part I will add there is kind of talking about other kinds of charms, and that we deal with iron is definitely something that is probably worth talking about if we're going to talk, folk magic.
I'll get some.
He's probably going to go and get a horseshoe.
There we go. There's some iron. Yeah, is a horseshoe. Chris, does the horseshoe go this way, or does it go this way?
And it depends on which way you're sending the energy.
Ooh, how complicated. So if the book tells you to do it this way, will it not work because there's another book that says this way? How does that work?
Both will work.
Is it all about the intention? Or does it not matter? Could I literally put it up this way? Because all that matters is that there's iron above the door.
Yeah.
I normally put mine up this way, which looks better, more aesthetic, that way or that way.
Well, you do worry about the aesthetics, don't you?
That way looks more aesthetic to me. That looks better.
You're as bad as those Insta witches.
Oh, definitely. I tell you what, I will take a picture of that and stick it on the Instagram. So follow the Thoth Witchcraft Shop Instagram, everyone, and like it.
So why iron, Leon?
I'll do what they do, like on reality television and that, and I'll do it right now.
Either he can't hear me or he's ignoring me.
This is next level, this is. Continue.
So, yeah, either that you're ignoring me or you actually can't hear me. One or the other.
No, I'm listening.
Yeah, he's ignoring me.
No, I'm listening. I'm listening.
Well, I asked you a question and you've ignored me.
What was your question?
My question was, why iron?
Why iron? Because it to repel the fae. That's why, to repel the fae. The unworthy, the fae, and say no, like the devil's alcohol repels angels, apparently. That's why.
I like that. I need to get me some. I might start putting it on like cologne.
One should never touch the devil's alcohol.
I might start wearing it as cologne.
Then people would start thinking you're an alcoholic.
Yeah. But do you not find that the iron part is a superstition of a superstition?
The iron part's a superstition of a superstition. I'd be inclined to agree with that.
It's not about iron, is it? Let's face it. It's not actually about the metal iron.
I'm still getting used to this Instagram thing. I think I've done it. I put it as a story. Do we know what a story is? I'm not entirely sure.
Don't put it as a story.
So
it won't.
there's this concept that certain magical, with certain spirits and the like, don't like certain things. So they say the Fae, they don't like iron, right? And they say the Jinn, they don't like the vodka because they're in competition with the vodka, right? So, you know, the concept of the charm, how much of it matters what you're making it out of. So, for example, if the iron is the bit that repels the spirits, am I just putting it in the form of a horseshoe or a trinket or whatever and making it look pretty because it would look weird if just some random piece of iron was above my door or around in my bag or something like that? You know, if it looks like a nice little trinket, is it more aesthetically pleasing? Is that it? Or is it the fact that the kind of the mineral or substance or whatever it is made on doesn't actually matter all that much? That it's actually the carving, the thing, that is the important bit. Well, obviously, the big problem is that we don't know, do we? We don't know because they don't write that in the book. They don't write in the book, Chris. So how is one supposed to know? And yes, Alex, I did say vodka. Vodka is in competition with gin. That is why the gin don't like the vodka. And pirates like rum. And where pirates go and conquer other places, the local spirits of those lands also seem to like rum, which I've never really got. I've never got that one.
Okay.
But I learned that from that documentary, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay. That really, really well-known documentary.
Yeah.
Okay, Liam.
All about magic, okay. Matt. Calypso's in it.
Okay. Yeah, she is. We do love a sea witch. Right. Okay. You've thrown me with all your rubbish going on. Okay. The iron. Why
I've
iron? You still haven't answered the question. Just, I think stupefy is most definitely the word I would apply.
It's a confusion charm because I'm ever so charming. I confuse the faustiest witch, you see. Much like the witch bottle confuses and confangs bad spirits. Well, the bad spirit just got confused and confanged. You all saw it. It's evidence on the internet. You all saw him get confused and confounded by the iron horseshoe. So yes, Jane. I think it was Jane that asked. Horseshoes clearly work on the evil because they did work on him.
No. I think horseshoes are cute. But yes, there's an interesting iron reference about it. There are lots of theories. I still stick with the fact that it's about buckthorn, but we can keep that for another day.
Alex, so we've got another question. A really interesting question of you, though. Would you say that the jinn and the fae are related? Interesting.
No. I personally wouldn't.
No, but there is, much like in my family, our family secrets, right? And at the family secrets that we all know but we're not allowed to talk about is that certain people think that a certain person is their father and that they're all brothers and sisters. They ain't, because certain family members happen not to be brothers and sisters, but half brothers and sisters. But you're not allowed to bring it up. So they're pretending that the daddy is the baby daddy. And some people like to pretend that the jinn and the fae are the same thing. Some people like to pretend the jinn and the fae are related. But a lot of these people seem to be the same sort of people that say, it don't matter which goddess you call. Because it's all the same goddess.
Yeah. What they misunderstand, I think, is the similarity in the energy stream that they come from.
Yeah.
That they comprehend that therefore must be the same. You're like, no, they just have the same energy signature, or at least similar enough for you that aren't particularly well versed.
Is a Ferrari the same as a Renault Megane? They're both vehicles and they're both cars, but they really ain't the same, are they?
Yeah. That was a nice one, even though you used cars.
Well, lots of people are aware of cars. I know you come from centuries back. They didn't have that. They had chariots, didn't they, back then? But there's this modern thing called a car, right?
Okay. Yes, they weren't around when I was here last. They're new. You just befuddled me now again.
I'm sorry, Chris.
You're just talking shit.
I will put that down so that it doesn't affect you.
It is giving me a horrible pain in my chest, I must admit. So if I
put it down, so
if I drop down,
you won't be repelled or confused or confounded now. But this is proof that it works and that Chris is pure evil. I mean, look, he's even in a dark room wearing black. I mean, you can't get much evil than that.
I still feel that pure is still the wrong word, but even when it's paired with evil.
So Alex wants you to expand, I think, or wants us to expand. Are we saying that they're XYZ based in the same way that human and frog is carbon based? So essentially, do they come from the same universe? Jinn, Fae, and this universe that we're in, humans and animals and shit. Do they originate here? Did they grow up here? I think that's what Alex wants to know. What's your take on that?
They're both from different places.
Yeah.
Not how would you put it? In some ways, Jinn are closer to native than the Fae are. But I wouldn't necessarily argue Jinn are from a different universe. Jinn are kind of our version of the Fae is kind of probably where I would go. But
okay, that's interesting.
Whereas the Fae is trickier because you've got to understand how universes rub up against one another to kind of make sense of that. But yeah, whereas I kind of would probably put the Jinn as our native version of the Fae, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
I think a way of looking at it is imagine you're in a reception area of a hotel, right? And you see all of these things coming through this door, and it's called the entrance, right? And you think, well, they're all coming from the same place because they must be the same. But in reality, they just manifest in the building the same way. They come through. They have the same kind of... They look like they're coming from the same place, but they're not really. They just manifest in the same way. Because you're used to people coming out of the elevator, you see, because you're in the hotel and you grew up in the hotel. And all you know is the hotel. So all you know about is going in the elevator. Or, if you're a hacker/witch, going up the stairwell at the back that no one knows about, apart from the naughty people that go out for a smoke every now and then. But then there's these things, new things, that don't quite belong here. They're not quite the same thing. And they come through this big entrance. Well, here's the thing. Why didn't you try going back through that entrance? You discover that there is far more than just that hotel you have been led to believe. Hotel being physicality, essentially.
Okay.
When you get outside of physicality, you're on outside of Physicality Street. Now, it may appear that all these things, they're milling about, they're walking about on this sidewalk outside of the physical realm. Well, this is where all the stuff is. And then you start to work out, wait a minute, there's another hotel opposite that all goes here. And then you think, well, actually, if I wander around even more, there's more streets and more buildings that aren't hotels. And then outside of that, there's there's a city, which is all the hotels and streets. But then outside of the city, there's a load of other stuff and that. Quite complicated. But all you're looking at is the way in things manifest and thinking that, well, that's got 2 arms and 2 legs and 2 eyes. And not everything that comes through that door does it? No. If a djinn and a fae walked into a bar...
I don't know if that helped or not.
It helped me. I don't know. They'll have to comment to say whether that was helpful. But you was nodding along with it, so the first part you must have agreed with it.
It made sense to me, but then a lot of things you say make sense to me. They don't necessarily make sense to the rest of the world. So yeah, it's a tricky one because they spend a lot of time here, which kind of means they spend, you're used to seeing them. They're made similar things. So yes, the carbon-based comment with the human and the frog is yes, but if there are lots of carbon-based things, you could have, you could be talking about the tree or the frog. They're not even remotely similar, but they're both carbon-based. So, it's difficult. But yes, if you're wanting the perfect classification system, then you're going to have to go and explore them.
But you need to understand your magical periodic table, don't you? And it's only when understanding the magical periodic table that you probably be able to have that conversation. Chris is either stumped or Wi-Fi problems. I'm presuming Wi-Fi problems because his eyes is moving slowly.
My internet always up about this kind of time. Clearly, there's too many porn. So I need to stop watching the porn and actually pay attention to the gems of gold that we keep throwing out here.
Well, ideally, obviously, stop watching the porn whilst we're fucking filming, Chris. I mean, ideally, you close all the little tabs down as well, because that slows the computer down. Not only do the viruses slow the computer down, but also all the little tabs you've got open, bloody millions of them, that's slowing the computer down.
Hey,
poor computer can't keep up with it.
I have a grand total of 4 open.
4 tabs or 4 windows full of tabs?
Tabs. 4 tabs.
Okay.
Oh, Alex says he'd love to know where to get a magical periodic table. No, he needs to go and create one.
Is that giving away secrets? I mean, most of the basics is in Agrippa, so, Okay, things have moved on since, well, no, magical community haven't really moved on since then, has it? I mean, some people have moved on since then, but generally speaking, now, what you'll probably find in most of the books is it was already in Agrippa. So we were helping someone build their magical periodic table at one point. That's quite fun. But anyway, we got to talk about defensive, protective magics, haven't we? So the basic concept that is as above, so below. If I've got some priceless art, or I've got a load of millions of dollars and gold bars, I want to protect that. And you put things that are logical. You might put the gold in a safe. You might put a security system in, blah, 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 blah. But remember, none of it is impenetrable. It just means that you can't run in off the street and grab the gold. But if you planned it right and you had the right knowledge an ability, you would be able to break through it. So defensive magic is about understanding what your level of understanding is, understanding what you're wanting to protect against, and then creating barriers and ways and forms of protection that protect against what you want to protect against. And it really is a case of what you want to, because not everyone wants to protect against the same thing necessarily, and you don't want to seal yourself off, because that's no fun, and you might end up becoming a vegetable. Or a fan of
just
Carnation
a polite reminder that obviously,
which some would argue is the same thing.
Ask
just a more lively vegetable.
Ask as many questions as you like. Obviously, try and stick to the protection comment. Title of today. Obviously, we'll answer any questions while we're on, but you've obviously got plenty of time to get a few in while we talk and waffle on about protective magic.
So what was the last...
I don't know if you've got any of that.
What was the last sort of protective magic you did then, either for yourself or for someone else? You there? Is he there? Don't think he's there.
I don't know, Obviously, I do my daily work. But I'm here, I think. It's starting to piss me off now. I'm trying to think what my last is.
Would you class the cleansing as any form of protective magic? Because that's stopping things from building up, really. But would you still class that as protection, or would you think cleansing isn't under that umbrella? It's a different thing altogether.
I think proper cleansing and grounding work is foundational for any kind of protection. So, I think that in anything is more, I think we've said this before, but it's far more having protective charm and things like that. That you create for specific uses, but actually, they're not. I've got in any collection of, but then I mostly work from a super witch where I just put up wards when and if I need them. And I don't know if you took any of that, but
I took it all with a pinch of salt. Okay. So protective measures, if we know that we really should have something that's much like when you clean your house, stops stuff from accumulating and building up. In our houses, we generally have security, don't we? We have a lock on the front door, we close the windows. Some people have security cameras, some people have alarms, some people sleep with a baseball bat under the bed. Let's talk a little bit about that. So when you've met many a practitioner, different ones, what sort of magical protections do they utilize, and why would they go about doing that? What's the attempt? Because do they just walk around fully armed all the time? And if so, why do they do that?
Some people really do. I try and advise against it because, I often liken it to why build castle walls that are big and showy, because that advertises to everybody that there's something in there to come and nick. So I try and push people in towards, cloaks of invisibility, those sorts of things that give a kind of different concept of what you kind of want to fight under the radar. You don't really want to be, to use an Abraham term, hide your light under a bushel. you know, you need to consider the level of energy that you're throwing out. So with the people that we deal with on a day to day, most of them will have different levels of protection depending on what they're expecting to be attacked with. So, at the end of the day, the mundanes walking around with their St. Christopher on or something like that is probably all that's required, because not much is going to try and throw in those directions. When you start practicing at a more regular and higher level, then you start to attract attention. And then at that point, this is why this is important. One, for your cleansing and grounding to be a regular thing, so you're getting any dirty energies that attract to you, you're getting rid of those. But also that you're prepared for anything that might come at you. But this is why cloaks of invisibility are far better, easier for you to kind of slip by and people not notice you, rather than actually putting up huge walls. I personally am not a big fan. Oh yeah, we said we'd talk about grids at some point, didn't we? I'm not a big fan of the fortress method, although we do have some mentees that need a fortress. But that's because they, go poking bears. And is
that to keep stuff out or to keep stuff in?
Keep stuff out, I think, more so than in. But the
fortresses and prisons often look very similar to the untrained eye.
They do. And this is obviously why I kind of advise against them, is because they build these big walls and they're not very breathable, and therefore energy stagnates. There needs to be a good energy flow. Otherwise, I find it much easier to throw up temporary wards myself, and spend the rest of the time hiding the smell of witch, so that people don't notice. But that's down to personal preference. You really have to depend. At the end of the day, the majority of people are mundane. It is safer to look like a mundane when you're walking amongst them. So it's that sort of approach. Again, the times you need protection are when you're not conscious, is the biggest one. So you're wanting to make sure that if you're not in your body, that it is well protected. Again, this comes down to, I can't argue enough that good grounding and good cleansing is regular practice. And I don't mean of your crystals and your other tools that you use, although you should be cleaning those too. Is making sure you're clean, that your energy levels are clean. And the best way, which we've probably talked about on here before, is to include those into your daily routine. In a very sympathetic magic kind of way, although it's not. In this kind of, when you're brushing your teeth or when you're showering, or that you add those layers of energetic work into the mundane things that you do. You shouldn't have to, as you leave your house, remember to switch your cloak of invisibility on. Like, it should happen naturally, triggered by the fact that you are leaving the house. You shouldn't need to be going, oh, I forgot my keys. Like, it shouldn't be like that. It should be natural. It should be part of what you do every day, and therefore you experience it that way. It should be second nature. If it's something you have to think about, there's a possibility that you've got some blind spots that you haven't noticed.
Well, there's something to be said for integrating defenses so much that you forget they're there. If you're a nudist and you walk around all the time in the nude, you stand the risk of, when you pop to the local shops to go and get some more milk, you don't even think about opening the front door and walking out with no clothes on, because you're so used to doing it. I used to utilize aura suppression a lot, and I still do. And what I tend to do with aura suppression is to suppress everything in, so people find it more of a difficult to read or don't get that energy pouring out. But then what I do is I put up not necessarily a shield, because I don't care much about shielding, because I prefer, like you say, take the free meal and eat it. I tend to put a mask of a blank canvas. They fill in the details, so they project onto me what they want me to be or what they think I am. And not only do I look at the canvas that is there, but they're seeing that canvas. So it means that you can blend in really well. No one ever gets worried so much when they're having to deal with you, because they don't find you, scary or anything like that, or out of place. And it tells you a lot about them based on what observations they're making or what they think about you, because that canvas changes. So you can look at that canvas and say, oh, well, they're projecting that onto my canvas. I'm becoming that. But that tells me a lot about them and their personality and interest. One thing that Alex mentions, which is really good when it comes to defenses, is the concept of guard dogs. So servitors, egregores, making spirits for protection. Obviously, spirits can be multi-use and do lots of things, but adding protective measures into them can be quite useful. It can be useful to have a dog as a companion, but at the same time also, if someone tries to break into the house at night or attack you when you're out and about, the dog will go for them. Brilliant. That's great protective magic, because it's malleable and changeable and adaptable and multi-use,
I must say, I do prefer spirit dogs to real ones, but that's because they smell less.
Yes. I'd prefer a spirit dog than a real dog, if I'm honest.
So, there's less hair and smell to deal with. But
what you still have to feed them now.
You still have to feed them. But the other point that Alex has asked there about works great in the mundane world, so why not in the spirit world? That becomes down to the fact of how aware are you of your astral body. So this is a lot of what people forget, is you should be cleaning your energetic bodies as well as your physical one. There are lots of them. It's not as simple as, there's just this one that you're used to. So depending on what way you are operating, so what kind of energy you're throwing out, will depend on which of these energetic bodies are lighting up and attracting certain levels of attention. If you lack the knowledge to be aware of the appropriate level of your energetic bodies, then that's where you're going to have trouble, will be on that energetic level. The great thing is that they have this great filtering down process, which means if you're cleaning your astral body and you're still having problems, the assumption naturally is it's further up than your astral body. So at which point you're kind of going, oh, am I aware of it? And am I capable of cleaning it? And that comes down to you being able to see those levels and understand what's going on with you on different. Just because you've remembered to put your mundane level cloak on doesn't mean that you've put your deity level cloak on. So you may still be showing off on other levels, but it really depends on, that comes down to your level of understanding your energetic bodies. And I don't think we can stress enough how when you start to really practice, knowing what you look, seeing and working with your energetic bodies are really important. And those sorts of problems will show up on your radar very quickly. When things start to mess with your astral bodies and other energetic bodies, those problems will hit you hard and from nowhere, if you're not putting work into that. It's why psychics have as much trouble as they do. They spend all this time in a second world without actually really looking at themselves from what they see. And therefore, when those sorts of problems start to happen, they're like, oh, it must be a mundane problem. You're like, no, your energetic body's a mess. Go and deal with it. And that's where, we've had so many come to us over the years of, that's where their problems are. And they're used to looking out from their astral body. They're never used to looking at their astral body. And therefore, that's where the problems start, is if you're starting to feel your tiredness there, and it's unshakable, that's going to be where it's emanating from, is one of those spiritual bodies.
Yeah, most spell work to do with defense and protective measures, protective talismans and amulets and that sort of thing, they protect against low-level background noise and taps on the wrist and low-level spirits. They won't protect you against anything on top of that. So if you've got a nice trinket, some sort of protective talisman or something like that you wear around your neck to push away all the energy and all of the... It might be worthwhile creating something that absorbs negative stuff that you'd normally be picking up, but trying to create some sort of talisman or amulet that defends you and blocks it is utterly useless, because anyone that's purposefully going out of their way to attack you, unless they're a complete idiot or a really, really, really bad witch, and I mean bad as in not very good, not bad as in then directing that, you're going to take into account what defensive measures they've got. If you see a stone wall, you're going to decide, I'm going to get a battering ram that's designed to take down stone walls, or I'm just going to go over it or under it. You're advertising your defenses, and most people do tend to advertise their defensive, not knowing that they're advertising their defenses. The best defenses are ones that look innocent, really, and that are traps. Traps are better. Can you purify yourself by traveling through certain Kabbalistic spheres or planetary spheres? So you're talking about Kabbalistic planetary magic. That is a tradition or a system of magic. Within that system of magic, there are protective rituals, ideas, that sort of thing for doing what we're talking about. Yes, but just because there are those measures doesn't necessarily mean that you know what they are, or that buying a book on it is going to teach you the correct measures. So one way of thinking about that, and definitely something to remember, is that if you're reading a ritual and following a ritual that someone else has written about or showed you or anything like that, and you're following it, expecting it will work because of the magic, is probably not going to work. What you need to remember is that, yes, it's all well and good saying that honey will make your skin better if you've got a wound. But if you're eating the honey, it's not going to work. And if it's general honey, not as good as Manuka honey. I could get a mobile phone, an old one, a Nokia 3310 or something, and I could say, this device calls people up, and I could plonk it in the table, and I could say, call someone up. But I don't know how the device works, and I ain't got a fucking battery in it, so it's not going to work. Much of what you see in magical practice is people kind of copying the gist of something and not really understand how it works. So when it comes to the Kabbalistic planetary magic, remember that is a magical system, but you really have to really get in there to understand how the magical system works. Because magical systems don't work by you just copying it. You know, there's a lot of this idea of path workings, I think, Chris, isn't there? Where, you do this meditation
we've got one of those
and stuff happens and that. Whereas really what you're talking about that is a system for exploration, a filing system of understanding, but you need to understand that filing system, much like you need to understand language. Something's going on with send me friendship requests, direct message me, blah, 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 blah. Yes, there we go. It's a Fataya.
We've got one of them.
Something like that. I don't know. Fataya. Let's get rid of them because they're saying about reading and stuff like that. And no one from the Keep On Chatting network or anyone from us is going to put in the comments, page me for a reading, or they don't page
contact us by direct message.
Yeah, direct message for a reading. No one's going to put that in there. So if there is anyone putting things like that, comments, it's probably a robot or a con artist. More than likely, a con artist robot. And we've pretty much out of time now. So is there anything else you want to cover really quickly, Chris? Or is that it?
No, I just, there's kind of a comment I just want to answer to Alex. You probably did, but you kind of came in and out again. My internet's really shit today. It was this kind of, yes, there are lots of different kinds of energy that can be used. What is important is that you understand energy cleans and grounds you. If you don't understand the energy, you know, just because someone said, you know, this fucking, oh, my brain's not working now. It's irritating me. The, you know, just because someone says nitroglycerin is good and powerful doesn't mean you're going to really want to wash yourself in it. It's one of those things that you need to actually understand what it does and how it works. You know, you're not going to have radiation bath and not only kill the stuff that you wanted to kill, but also kill yourself. You know, it needs to be relative and you need to understand what you're doing. You know, there is such thing as too much of a good thing. So, you know, remember that just because someone has told you this is powerful or this is good or I use this, doesn't mean that it's going to work for everybody. You need, what's important is you understand the energy. And what's the most important is that you can see its effects. You need to be able to understand and see how these things work on your energetic bodies. So if you aren't understanding and seeing how that works, then you need to really be thinking about, how are you doing the right thing? You know, yes, we're saying cleanses and groundings are really important, but you finding the way to do those things is just as, if not more important. Just because something works for some bruja doesn't mean it's going to work for, you know, an African shaman. Like, it needs to work in the system that they operate in. And if you don't use planetary energy, then you shouldn't really be cleansing yourself with planetary energy.
Yeah.
So
if you can drive a car, that doesn't mean that you can drive a tank or a submarine.
Yeah.
So remember that. Okay, I think that's it for this week's episode of the FAUSTY Witches. Bye, everyone.